G'day guys, welcome back. My name is Wildkard. Yes, finally, the Wallabies won their first game of 2026 and winning against none other than Eddie Jones's Japan. This is doubly happy for me and triply happy for me because the Wallabies actually went out there tonight and stuck to their guns and did not go for the penalty goals and pray for an easy win, right? And that is probably the most important part, in my opinion, of this win. It's not about the scoreboard, it's about the intent to play rugby and an intent to push themselves despite the hot conditions, despite the away crowd and eating sushi for the last week. Despite all of that, the team stuck it out, stuck to the game plan. And, there were times when the commentary was saying, wow, the Wallabies should take the penalties. If you had taken those penalties, there would have been a mental shift in the team and probably would not have scored the tries that actually won the game later on. That is really important that people kind of fail to understand, thinking that, you take the penalties and then still count all the tries that have been scored later on. If you're just kicking those penalties, those tries may never have happened. And so you can never say that kicking a penalty or not kicking a penalty is the result of the game winning. It's the mental attitude, it's the decision that lead into the decision to take the penalty. That is the most important. And I think the Wallabies, play some pretty good hard rugby with their guts out there. Especially there were times when the Wallabies down to 14 players with Amatosero, red card. We're going to look at that in a minute. They still stuck it out, didn't just concede a bunch of points. In fact, they defended really well during that period with Japan had to actually take a 3-point themselves, which I thought that was probably not the smartest thing to do. And it's something that probably Eddie Jones, gave the directions before the game, like during this period of the match, take the 3. Probably, regardless of what was happening, despite the fact that they had a player advantage, that's probably why the Japan did that. But hey, all credit to Japan. They were, and going to this game, I knew they were going to be tough. I knew they were going to be really structured, and I knew they wanted to play that kicking game, and then with that counter-attacking style to try to find your weaknesses, and they did that really, really well. And the Wallabies, unfortunately, in my opinion, played into that game style that Japan really wanted to play. They couldn't quite assert the dominance as much as they wanted to break that pattern in terms of tighter areas. And as a result, they sort of just, allowed the ball to be thrown around and then allowing the Japan to play into that rhythm and that pattern that they're really, really used to playing. I don't know what they're used to playing, but they're drilled to be played in this way by Eddie Jones, and then the Wallabies just allowed them to play in that fashion. I've got a lot to talk about in this game. So first of all, the Amatosero red card. Now, I do think this is, a little bit inconsistent. The referee, obviously, there's a drop. There's, another player involved in terms of the clean out. And there's a sudden changing height as well. And Miles did look like he wrapped his hand on the right-hand side. The TMO upgraded this to a yellow, to a red, because he thought that because his other arm, you can't see on this angle, was not wrapped at all, was tucked for the whole duration of the game. And as a result, the TMO deemed this never an illegal attempt to clean out. So, despite he wrapped on one arm, they said this was never a legal move. All other mitigating factors basically becomes nullified. Essentially, you never had an illegal attempt to clean out, and it's a reckless play. So then there was a upgraded to a red card, which I think it's a bit tough. I think it is a little bit tough, but I do think that, if we go back to the Luke Jacobson incident, where you can see from this picture, he sort of jumped over the ruck, which I thought was reckless, hit Van der Vliet on the head. I think it was Van der Vliet on the head. He was not upgraded to a red card in this incident, despite the fact that this was tuck shoulder too. But the reason the referee said this wasn't a red card, because despite the shoulder was tucked, he actually tried to wrap, and it was kind of blocked by the player. He kind of wrapped a bit late, or kind of blocked by the player on the ground, which I actually thought was the wrong decision, by the way, because he jumped in, he was off his feet. But still, I guess the conclusion we can draw from both these incidences is the fact that whether or not the shoulder that is connecting to the player's head made an attempt to wrap or not. So I guess that's what they're looking for, right? That's the indicator they're looking for. So that's the only way I could say why this was this sort of inconsistencies. But the only thing we can hope for is that going forward we keep getting that same consistency, right? So if someone wants to do this again and then they do make a wrap, you can't just say that's a red card, because you've kind of made the precedence here. Anyway, next thing is the scrummaging. I thought the Wallabies the Wallabies had an early scrum dominance and then just didn't quite follow that through for the most of the game. And then Tupou came on, the Wallabies started to get a dominance again. Japan did have one really good scrum in the whole game, and there was one Wallaby scrum that was overextended, which got turned over. So first of all, let's look at the good scrum from the Tupou here. And again, I want to talk about this one because this is very similar to these two scrums I'm going to show you. It's very similar to what happened between the All Blacks and the absolute scrum warfare out there against the Stormers earlier today. And I thought, so let's just watch this one. I thought the All Blacks was hard done by the referee because I thought this is, the same call should be made for the All Blacks as it is here for the Wallabies. So let's have a look. There's Tupou here against a Japanese player. And the Japanese player pulls him down. And the referee calls that a pulling down. A very similar move by the South Africans, except that the South African player, whilst he pulled the All Blacks player down, he was able to tuck his shoulder in, so his elbow didn't touch the ground first, which was the difference in terms of the interpretation of the referee. But in terms of just pulling it back, is basically the same move. And also the All Black player sort of like had a longer, he kind of like overextended himself a little bit as well as a result of the pulling down. So the referee was in my opinion incorrectly given the scrum penalty against the All Blacks, because the ultimate thing that caused the collapse is not because of the overextension, but because of the pull down. The same move. If you watch this space, it's the exact same move, except the elbow was a little bit better from the Stormers this morning and from the Japanese player here. Another scrum I'll talk about is here. Yeah, very similar scrum happened in the Stormers game as well, and it was correctly made. And we see this sometimes people asking me this question a lot: why is this not a penalty against the Wallabies? The one thing to look at is wheeling of the scrum is illegal. But if the scrum goes forward and then the scrum wheels, the illegal wheeling is penalized against the team that's going backwards. So if you have to go forward first to get the wheel to be blamed onto the opposition. That's the law. I'm going first on both sides. So we will see here. This may look like a very dominant Wallaby scrum. It's going forward, but it just comes around on the left hand side on Angus Bell's side, and on the right hand side where Tupou is, the scrum kind of just folds in, and this is a penalty against the Wallabies despite on their own feed because there wasn't enough movement on both sides of the scrum, and this was penalized as well in the Stormers game against the Stormers, I believe, against the Stormers, I believe it was. It might have been against the All Blacks, but there was a scrum as well, very similar to this. I think it was against the Stormers that was caught against them. Finally, I just thought defensively, the Wallabies pillar and post. Boys, what's going on here? Did I just travel to another timeline or something? Like, I remember, literally the first thing I was taught when I was playing a forward as a prop, or basically everybody in a Type 5 essentially. Your job is to make sure you mark the pillar and post, which is a 2 position right next to the ruck. Right, there's the ruck, one guy here, and then the second guy right next to him to pillar and post. At least you have 2 posts. At least you have on both sides, right? At least you're gonna have the pillar on both sides. The post might not be as much nowadays because players have wants to cover more space. But this you always have pillar on either side. And then if you just watch this sequence, I'm not targeting any player specific for the Wallabies. There just don't seem to be anyone playing the pillar position. And I'm not targeting it. Like, this is just a randomly section of the game. But if you go watch the whole majority of the match, this is the problem with Wallabies in their defense. I'm not sure what's happening. So you can see there. In fact, the guy who's supposed to be pillar is moving away and is calling someone else to take his spot. Your job is to obviously you've probably seen there's too many people on that side of the field, but you're leaving what's immediately in front of you wide open, right? Like, and again, this player here as well, I think that's Gus. He's just like, no one is marking here. I mean, there should be 2 players marking these 2 spots. So even with Amatosero, I mean, maybe this is the idea that they're having. We don't need 2 pillar and posts. We just want to have 1. I honestly, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen this before. Instead of having 2 pillars, you just have 1. Is this what they're doing? And this has really backfired against the Wallabies. So many times with Japan just... Look, again, there's just no one is even interested in covering that. It's almost like this just gap right there. No one's covering that. Not having a go of Amatosero at all. Like it seems to be just the ongoing theme for like someone needs to be standing there. Like Simon Fraser McWright. Somebody needs to cover this space here. Like there is just, I mean, I guess he's looking at Lonergan and thinking that he's the single pillar that they're playing for, so that they just have one pillar now, and that's why. I mean, it is just a little bit jarring looking at this. Like, so that's our pillar and post there. Let's have a look at this again. Again, there's a massive gap right here, and then again, there's just, yeah. So every time, it's not just any particular play or anything. Every time, it look like they only want to commit one pillar for the Wallabies, and that has, that's, I don't know if you've seen this in another game, especially at test level. Let me know. But I just noticed that this was such a glaring problem for the Wallabies for this entire game. Another thing is the kicking game. I already talked about. We did not win that at all. The Japan was able to find the space better. Obviously we weren't doing that box kicking, which I do like the decision to not do that, try to run the ball a bit more often. But when it comes to the kicking game, I thought we did really well with the 50-22 attempts for Tom Wright during the July Test series. We didn't do that at all. So, and then Japan was a bit more liberal in what they want to do with their kicking. And a lot of the long-range kicks, we just didn't have the distance. Meredith was really good at finding touch, but he was really struggling to get the exit. He was probably kicking in like 15-20 meters out of his own 22, which is just, at test level, is just not quite, like, yeah, that's just not, I'm sorry, but that's just not quite good enough. You got to really have to venture, into the opposition half, especially if you're kicking at the edge of your 22. So that's something that, I'm not really happy about. Outside of that, the what else do I want to talk about? I'll talk about the red card already. I thought Japan did really massively improve on the Maor defense, something that they really struggle with against the Irish, and in fact for the whole July series. So that's a big plus for the Eddie Jones and his friends. The scrum was not that bad either. I thought the Wallabies could assert dominance earlier in the game. They didn't do that, so credits to Japan. The rush defense was much better as well for Japan. The Wallabies were struggling to find the players out wide, especially sometimes when they were a bit flat. There was a lot of, there was a couple passes going loose because of that. There was a lot of really, really good breakdown pressure. Something that I've noticed the problem with Wallabies as well. Even in their own attack, they weren't getting the breakdown has always been good for Japan. In July Test series, they flood the breakdown consistently, and this once again they pressured the breakdowns more than what the Wallabies, I guess, were maybe up against in July Test series against some of the other teams, and just got a number of good turnovers there, and did really well in terms of defending that. So Japan, got to give credit to Eddie Jones. Lure the Wallabies to play the style they wanted to play, and then targeted the areas that they thought was weak with the Wallabies, which was the breakdowns, and then played a kicking game that the Wallabies wasn't really able to respond in the most favorable fashion. So yeah, overall, I thought that was, I was pretty happy. It's the fashion that we won. That's most important. Unfortunately, guys, we have got no stats for this game. I've looked absolutely everywhere. You can see there's just no stats. I've looked all the different websites. So unfortunately, we don't have stats for this game. I didn't see any stats during the game as well, so I'm not sure. Maybe they just didn't collect, like during the broadcast. Maybe they just didn't collect anything. I'm not sure. Maybe, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. So unfortunately, we can't talk about the statistics. So I'm just gonna go through some of the tries and recap of the game, for this match. So it took about 12 minutes in the very hot conditions, for the Wallabies to get the. Oh, finally, one last thing. Harry Potter, one of the, it really started to getting into the strides in terms of being a really good ball runner, but for some reason he just refuses to pass the ball. Dude, if he just passed the ball, like, there was like at least 2 tries that could have scored if he just passed it. He just hesitates, and then he gets tackled, and then he tries to pop the ball off the ground or something, and then it just gets, just pass it. Like, oh god, it was so frustrating to watch. He does such a good job. He's been doing such a great job in terms of making those line breaks, but just pass, man, just pass. This was happening in the Italian game as well. I was just screaming at the TV, pass, man, pass. And then again, this game he did not pass, but hopefully he will learn to pass at some point. But anyway, in fact, I got to give him credit. In the second half, he did pass. The ball went nowhere, and then we still scored. It did pass, and it was botched, and then we still scored. So yes, just pass it, Mr. Potter. And let the magic happen. I guess that's the best way to say it. But anyway, recap of the game. 12 minutes in, there was a penalty for the Wallabies. There was a quick tap from the what do you call it? The Japan gets the first penalty. So it was a penalty against the Wallabies. There was from the turnover. The Japan, gets into the Wallabies 22. There was a ruck. Ito looked up. Sorry, the ball went out to midfield to Ito. He looked up. There was just a bunch of slow forwards. This period of play went for like a few minutes with just the ball being kicked back and forward, turnovers after turnovers. So there was a quick tap on the Wallabies. They tried to run, and the ball got the passes didn't go to hand, and the Japan gets a turnover right in front of 22, and they start running again, and everybody was out of their feet. There was a bunch of props right in front, middle of the field, tired, and then Ito looked up, just ran straight through for the try. 7-0 to Japan. 15 minutes into the game, there was a bunch of loose passes, Wallabies, but the ball eventually ended up souped up by Sami, running down the sideline. He kind of spread the ball back into the midfield. What happened here? The ball went to Suali'i on the other opposite end, went out to Suali'i. He tried to pass, it went to nobody. Went just on the ground, and then Harry Potter came back into the field from the win, scooped it up, and then just ran this nice angle. Nobody was expecting him to scoop the ball up, it looked like. Straight through for the try. 7 points to 7. 25 minutes into the game. This was a nice little line out for the Wallabies in the middle of the field. The ball went to Paisami. He drew the defender, went a little backdoor play to Meredith, got one hand on the ball, and then passed the ball out wide, and then Tom Wright runs in for the try. 14 points to 7. After this, there was a penalty. The Wallabies could have taken the 3, but no, they were just ruthless at it. Unfortunately, this led to the Mars Amatosero red card, so couldn't score, but still, the Wallabies really backed themselves, and I really like that, and that's the most important part. 33 minutes in the game, Japan gets the try to level the score. So there was a guy that ran down the middle of the field. He got tackled, and then no one was there. Like, there was no commitment in the rocks by the Wallabies. He just got up and ran again, picked up the ball and ran again, and then it was tackled again. There was more Japanese players pick and drive. Got about 22 minutes into 22, and then there was a quick ball on a quick runner receiving on the flat ball. I think it was Tua who ran through for the try. 14 points to the 14 halftime score. Second half, 2 minutes in, the Wallaby came out with fiery speed. There was some nice, good hands from the Wallabies going inside the Japan half. The ball went out to Suali'i. Suali'i drew a pass to Harry Potter. He ran through. Just before he got tackled, he tried to pass the ball, and the ball got kind of just bounced on the ground, but it was scooped up anyway by the Wallabies. And it was ran through by one of the Wallaby players, got about 1 meter short, and Jorgensen ran up, picked the ball, went over the try line, pick and go try. 14 points to 21 for the Wallabies. So yeah, even when Harry Potter botched the pass, the fact that he passed it still made this into a try. So that was pretty good. A couple minutes later, 44 minutes, there was a mistake from Harry Potter and Suali'i. The two guys got disconnected, so Suali'i rushed up for a rush defense, and Harry Potter just stayed on his line and opened up like a little V-shaped gap between them. One of the Japanese Ueda ran through for the try. The goal kick was missed because the player moved forward and he hesitated, and then it was charged. It was almost charged down, but he still missed because of the pressure. 19 points to 21. Japan still 2 points behind. 49 minutes in the game. Wallabies had a penalty, probably kickable to be honest, but they went for the line out. There was a massive 40-meter touch finder, 45 meters maybe. It was really far away, and then right on the 5-meter line for a line out. Lots of the Wallabies went for the line out. The ball crashed midfield for NASA. Lots of pick and goes, and eventually Fraser McWright picks and go, crashes over. 19 points to 28. After this, 52 minutes, the Wallabies got penalties not releasing. Japan taking a 3. yeah, despite Miles still in the bin, they're taking a 3. 22 points to 28. By the way, I'm pretty sure this penalty went over the shot clock because it was called 44 seconds. I think it was 51 minute 44 seconds, and it wasn't kicked till 50 seconds, which is past the 1 minute allocated time. They did not have a shot clock because get the T out there. Somebody get the T out there. Right? Did not happen. No one brought the T out. But still, as soon as you call for the penalty, the shot clock starts. It doesn't matter if you didn't get the T out in time. And then he'd taken more than the minute that was allowed from when the penalty was indicated. You can go watch this if you wanted to check the clock. And then, but still, they get the 3 anyway. So that was a bit disappointing. So 22 points to 28. 57 minutes, another penalty to Japan. They clearly had the momentum. Take another 3 right from the goalpost as well. This was a bad decision. That one before, sure, I get that's both of these are pretty bad decisions. Especially this one, I think it was really close to try line. The Wallabies were, crumbling a little bit. So they're taking the 3, 25 points to 28. After this, there was a lot of more pressure from the Wallabies. They went for the scrum, got the scrum penalties, and then they went for more scrum, get another penalty. Just keep building the pressure, not taking the 3 right up on the goalpost, and then Meredith taking a tap, and he almost knocked it on, and then what's his name? Lonergan got the ball, and he got tackled and got turned over for a penalty. So that was really disappointing. But still, the fact that they backed themselves was maybe just lacked a bit of patience there. Was really, really good. Didn't take the 3. 70 minutes again, there was, the Wallabies, against Ireland were probably going for the 3 here. They didn't. They went for the touch finder deep into the Japan 22, and they went for the more. Bantu pitch and go. The ball shifted slowly to the midfield, and big boy Tanana Tupou was 1 meter away. He got pretty smart. He ran for the corner of the post, the post on the goal post, so that only one guy can tackle him from one side, and he gets under the next to the post for the try. Really smart play, Mr. Tupou. 25 points to 35, and then Japan, in the last ditching effort, 78 minutes, didn't kick the goal. They went for the line out. More penalties against the Wallabies. Lots of pressure from Japan, and eventually Warner Durns pick and go for the try. 32 points to 32 points to 35. Couldn't actually see the grounding, but the referee said he saw the ball on the ground when everybody kind of moved away. Don't think that's a fair assessment, because if you didn't see the ball grounded when everybody's piled onto it, you can't say that it's a try when everybody moved away, because people may have let go after you said it. So there was no camera angle either. So, but anyway, still that was the last ditch effort for Japan. 32 points, 35. Couldn't get any more after that. And the Wallabies wins this crucial first win for Mr. Les Kiss. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for the Boca versus Los Pumas. Cheers.